Right. Well, that should be a lot better. I discovered the problem. And the problem was that my headphones were still connected to my Bluetooth. So the microphone for my headphones and the microphone from the Yeti were both trying to pick up my voice. So thank you for, dear God, thank you for not letting me go through an entire episode just to delete it immediately, because I don't know if I would have been able to run back in and do another one. Uh, so the draft is over. And that little tangent I was going on before the microphone ordeal is that when Patrick Mahomes came into the NFL, in a large way, we felt like we were going to be all right. Manning left. We had this hole in our heart. And Patrick Mahomes came in and was immediately the best quarterback, best player. Some were saying that we've ever seen. I mean, we got this guy that's kind of like Brett Favre, but he wins like Tom Brady. You know, he seems really smart, but he also can run. He plays backyard football. It's almost like if Brett Favre could always be playing the best game of his life. That game you saw against the Vikings? No, it was the Raiders Monday night game after his dad died. If Patrick Mahomes is like if Brett Favre is always playing Brett Favre's best games and even more. My point is that kind of made it feel a little bit better. And then we got Joe Burrow. Okay, and it was like, okay, Joe Burrow, we watched him do amazing things at LSU. Like we knew immediately, oh, Joe Burrow is going to be the real deal. And then he got injured in his first season, like 6 games into the season. And then we just kind of were like, he'll be good, I think. And then the next season takes his team to the Super Bowl. Then we had that during that injury for Joe Burrow, we had Trevor Lawrence enter the chat. And in between of all these timelines, we've had Jalen Hurts and Tua Tagovailoa and Lamar Jackson. All right. Russell Wilson was actually kind of at this point feels like part of that old group of quarterbacks. And he's like the old kid that is going to high school parties, but he's in college, or he should be in college, but he's not. That's kind of how Russell Wilson feels at this point. You've had Kyler Murray, who right now the stock is really low, but I mean, 1 year ago, people were really high on Kyler Murray so much that they gave him the most money of any player in the NFL. Not right now, it's not, but at the time, it was a record contract, and that's how highly Arizona thought of him. I mean, just go division by division. You look at teams that used to be weak, the Giants. They just knocked this draft out of the park. They added so much talent, and at the same time, their quarterback just went to the playoffs and beat the Vikings. And I understand that the Vikings were pretty flaky of a team, but if that's what you're focused on, then you're missing the whole point. The point is that the NFC East during my lifetime has always been that there is 2 teams that are, average to good, and then there's 2 teams that are bad. Commanders are usually one of them, and then take your pick for the other one. Who's going to be mediocre? Philly, Dallas, or the Giants? And you look at the weak divisions. The Browns have Deshaun Watson. I predict that he will be a lot better going into this season than he was after not playing for 2 years, however long it was. So Lamar, you look at the teams that we used to laugh about, Cincinnati Bengals. They're a Super Bowl contender every year with Joe Burrow. The Pittsburgh Steelers, once Big Ben retired, the Steelers just went off in this draft. And look, I think the Eagles did the best of any team. Personally, I feel really confident about that. But at the same time, there were many teams that did very good in this draft. Okay? Now, I had time today to write. I've been trying to get better at writing because when I do the podcast, it's a very opinionated. It's just me telling you guys my opinion. But when I sit down and I write, it allows me to do a lot of deep dives into stats and kind of direct my opinion. Okay, you feel this way? We'll back it up with something. So I did do a lot of writing today. Okay. And one of the picks that for me, just I couldn't believe the Eagles did it again was Keely Ringo. Keely Ringo's cornerback, and he was on the charts for best available. Actually, let me just read you what I wrote because I don't want to say some of it and then read it. Keely Ringo to Eagles. The Eagles are benefiting from value players dropping like no other team. We all know what they pulled off in the first round, but Keely was another player I loved. If you played a substantial role on the Eagles, if you've played a substantial role on Georgia's defense over the past 2 seasons, there's probably a good reason for NFL front offices to want you. Ringo certainly qualifies as such, having played in 29 games while notching 4 interceptions for the Bulldogs, which repeated as champions in January. So Keely Ringo, not the number 1 corner on the board, right? And we understand we had Minnesota's corner have to go, and then we had Penn State with Joey Porter. But right after the 3rd corner, that's when Ringo was supposed to go. And I'm gonna get into that right here. At 6'2", 205 pounds, that's good length, by the way. That's Patrick Surtain length. You like these lengthy cornerbacks as long as that they're quick and their hips aren't stiff and they got good ball movement, good ball skills. Length is a huge bonus, man. 205 pounds. Ringo's measurables are fantastic. At the scouting combine in Indy, he ran a 4.36 40-yard dash. 6'2", 4.36 40-yard dash, giving general managers another reason to strongly consider Ringo once Christian Gonzalez, Devin Witherspoon, and Joey Porter came off the board. Okay, so we knew that. That's what I was just saying. Christian Gonzalez, Devin Witherspoon, Joey Porter. We kind of knew it was Devin Witherspoon, Christian Gonzalez, and then Joey Porter. And by the 17th pick in the first round, we had Gonzalez and Witherspoon off the board. They almost went like that. So it was Seattle. No, I'm thinking of the receivers. Seattle started by taking Devin Witherspoon. And I actually made a really cool sheet that tells you my favorite matchups to look forward to next season, but only using first-round players that were drafted this year. And I'll tell you that in a little bit. So by the 17th pick in the first round, Gonzalez and Witherspoon were off the board. And when round 2 officially started, we saw the Steelers. They weren't able to resist the talent there. They immediately trade with the Bears to start day 2. And in the first pick, they get Porter. So Keely Ringo, by the 2nd pick in the 2nd round, could have come off the board at any point and it would have been justified. It would not have been weird. Nobody would have said, what? Why did Keely Ringo get drafted? So by the 2nd round, pick 2, it was on. Anybody could have made that call to bring in Keely Ringo. And I was hoping, like much other teams out there, the fan base was hoping that it would happen. Eagles did way too good, but I still have hope. Screw the Eagles. We got Deontay Banks, JMS, and Jalen Hyatt in the first 3. Yeah, the Giants had a great draft, but the Eagles did something different. The Eagles were able to take the best players in the draft, and a lot of times when you have a really good draft, you get, a couple guys that are B+. And now B+ is really good, right? Because we have to be realistic. Not everybody can be an A+, because then when there's an A+, we don't know what to call them. You have to separate people. And Jalen Carter was supposed to go number 1 overall to the Bears. That was not a debate. It wasn't until he got caught racing cars that anybody had a problem with that. Okay, but let me stick to this because I'm going to get to that right here. So he could have come off. Keely Ringo could have came off the board at any point. It would have been justified. Instead, Keely somehow falls to the 4th pick in the 4th round. So he falls another 2nd round, 3rd round, 2 entire rounds, and now we're at the 4th pick in the 4th round, and gets picked up by the Eagles with the 102nd pick in the draft. Okay. The Eagles sat back and watched Keely Ringo fall all the way to the 4th round. Now, this wasn't the only player that they benefited from doing that. Okay. So I would say the Jalen Carter, right? I just told you that projected to go number 1 overall. Okay. But look at this. So we know Jalen Carter, 9th pick, yada, yada, yada. But then when the Eagles get to the end of the draft, we see that they were able to get Nolan Smith. Okay. Now, if they only had drafted, because they do grades for every round. If they would have only drafted Jalen Carter, the Eagles would have gotten an A+ on the 1st round. But they didn't. Nolan Smith ends up falling almost out of the 1st round. And he was the 3rd ranked edge, right behind Will Anderson and Tyree Wilson. He was ranked 3rd. Will Anderson, Tyree, both of those guys were off the board by the 4th pick. Seattle took Tyree Wilson, and you had Houston take Tyree who took Will Anderson? Alabama. Will Anderson went to Houston at pick 3. Tyree went to Seattle at, I think, pick 6. Okay. So the fact that it took an entire draft in the 3rd ranked pass rusher, and it wasn't like, these guys are, huge margins. A lot of people were saying that Nolan Smith was going to go down, in 3 years from now, he'll be the best edge rusher in this entire draft. He falls all the way to 29, and who else to collect the highest value on the board but the Eagles again. So they get the number 1 overall at 9. Now they get the 3rd best edge rusher at 29. The Eagles moved to pick up Ringo because they weren't even drafting at the 4th pick in the 4th round. But Ringo was still there, and they knew he had no business being on the board, and they weren't able to wait anymore, to just watch somebody else pick him up. They waited, and they got to a point where they were like, if he makes it one more pick, it would be a miracle. And they move up and they get their guy. Okay? Now, while this is all going on, we saw another dog go to Philly. I don't know if all dogs go to heaven, but I know this. All dogs go to Philly. We saw DeAndre Swift go to Philly. Another bulldog. A bulldog that, by the way, I'm gonna actually just read this. I get so excited to just go away from the notes, but I wrote what I'm going to say in the notes. Okay, so look. For a while, it looked like the Eagles were going to lose Darius Slay and Bradbury. Instead, they found out a way to keep them both on a 3-year deal. So they're retaining both of their corners, and that they're really 2-year deals when you look at it. Okay, so the Eagles still have Maddox as their nickel. Okay, now here's the thing. I did a little bit of research, and I found out. I looked up what kind of defense does Keely Ringo play? Because if they have Darius Slay and they have Bradbury on 2 sides, and they're both on 2-year deals, and they have Maddox playing the nickel, I was like, maybe they want him to come in and be the star nickel. Okay, so I looked into it, and the Eagles, their newest cornerback, Keely, can line up on the outside of both sides of the field, and he can line up as the nickel. And cornerbacks that can follow their assignments around the entire football field are coveted in the NFL. Everybody wants a cornerback that can follow a star receiver anywhere on the field. And that's what Ringo is. He has a combination of physical and athletic strength. NFL teams would have drafted him, I would have thought, latest by mid-second round. Okay? The Eagles traded a 2024 third-round pick to the Texans to move up to that fourth round. A 2024 third-round pick. That's next year's third-round pick to move up to seal Keely Ringo. And when you really think about it, that third-round pick, I'm under the impression right now that it's going to be a 32nd overall pick. And I think you know what I mean. Steve, what's going on? We're just torturing Bill a little bit here before we praise the Giants. Okay? So, the Eagles traded that 2024 third round pick to the Texans. They move into the fourth spot. It was an aggressive move for the Eagles, but they knew that they wanted their guy. Okay? Wouldn't one more Bulldog just top it off? This is how they got DeAndre Smith. The Eagles traded a fifth round pick in 2025, a fifth round pick and a seventh round pick this year to send DeAndre Swift to the Eagles. This is one of those things where you're just almost like, how? A fifth and a seventh? How does somebody that was drafted early in the second round only 3 years ago go for a fifth and a seventh this year? Fifth and sevenths. Do you know how many seventh round picks aren't even on the active roster when preseason rolls around? Unbelievable. Okay. So for the second year straight, I do believe the Eagles have improved immensely in the NFL draft. They added 4 players. Okay. And that's my whole point. Okay. You can add, okay, this is a C plus, but he has the ceiling to be an A. And then you can add a B, and he's like, he might not be, an A plus, but he could be an A minus. And then you got a C that could really at least be a B plus. And then you got a couple D's, but we don't really know what they're going to be. They may stay there, they may go up, but you have this mixed basket. And usually, as the rounds go throughout the draft, the grades go down in that mixed bag of potential. The Eagles did something different. They got 2 players that are going to start as A players, and that is going to be their first round selections, okay? And then you have a player that's probably going to start as a B minus, C plus, that should be an A. And then you added DeAndre Swift, that's another A. If every year that you drafted, you could add 4 elite players on your team, you would always have a dynasty. Always. Because when it would be time to pay your running back, you draft a new one. Time to pay the safety, you draft a new one. And you just cycle it. So every year, it's a different group of 4 people that need to be paid. And if you really like somebody and he's a staple to the franchise, you keep him there. But the point is why are teams not doing that? Well, because it's hard to draft 4 amazing players every year. And usually it takes about 3 years to really know what you have. But in some cases, pretty much you have a good idea right away. It's like even Jadeveon Clowney, he didn't live up to his hype, but he was still a guy that you could plug in immediately, and he's still around. You looked at the Houston's first overall pick, Mario Williams, in 2007. You do have like these exceptions, and it's normally not at the quarterback spot. Like Bryce Young, I wouldn't put in that group. I do not feel like Bryce Young is a safe pick. I think it's the safest pick potentially but that doesn't make it safe. It's like saying, look, you're going to, do peyote and drive, or you're going to take a bunch of hits of acid and drive. It's like, you may say which way is safer, but that doesn't make it safe. So that's a little bit of an extreme example, but there was no Trevor Lawrence in this draft. There was no Joe Burrow in this draft. And if there is, then I'll be proved wrong. And I'm okay with that. I really am. Konnichiwa, Steve. I'm drinking tea. I was hoping that you would jump in here so I could tell you I'm drinking tea. Steve, I think we killed this draft 100%. Eagles, Packers draft is just sick, though. So that is why I put the Eagles really high up there, okay? Now, another team that I believe did really well is the Pittsburgh Steelers. And the pick that I really like, okay, so let me get to the first page here, because they got their offensive tackle from Georgia, who was the third ranked. So they get a guy, Broderick Jones. Immediately, you can plug him in. He's going to be solid. You can't have enough offensive tackles. They're actually pretty rare. There's only a couple great ones in every draft. And if you don't pick in the first 15 picks or the first 20 picks, you usually don't even get one. So right away, the Steelers get that settled, okay? Now, there was another player that continued to stumble down the draft as far as cornerbacks go, and you may have seen it happen. It was Corey Thrice. Corey Thrice, I spent a long time today looking into his life, and he was supposed to go around 106. He was actually picked at 241. He's another big corner. He went to Brown School, Purdue, I believe. It was Purdue. The interviews I was watching of him, he wasn't in his uniform. So anyway, he was another guy that continued to fall down, okay? And the reason he fell as far as he did is mostly because he had some injuries, okay? He had a year ago, not last year, a year ago, he had a season-ending injury. He registered 34 tackles and 10 pass deflection, 2 interceptions and 1 touchdown the last year. His return from the injury from 2 years ago. Okay, so with his size and recent injury, and I can just tell you this because I was watching this in the interview, they considered it a triumphant day when he ran a 4.4 at the 40-yard dash. Okay, because with his injuries, a knee injury, and his size, this is a big dude. I believe he's 6'3". They were saying with your injury, they're like, dude's going to run. He's going to go out there and run a 4.7. Okay. And all the interviews, he said that his injury actually strengthened him. And look, I think this guy's actually going to be good as well. Okay. There may not be another cornerback, a team that capitalized on cornerback specifically falling. Okay. So let me pull up obviously I just said the Eagles capitalized the best on just elite talent falling in general, but the Steelers specifically in the cornerback market, they crushed it. Okay, so they get that offensive tackle that's going to be a great offensive tackle for a long time. The offensive linemen, when they're great, are very easy to it's not, there's not really a lot of margin for what if they suck. Like if you got the one of the 3, you're good. And he was one of the 3. Joey Porter was falling all the way out of the first round, remember? And that was another solid pickup on their part, right? So Joey Porter, and also adding in their second round, I don't know how to pronounce this name. Kenau Benton. He was all Big Ten second team, number 95 defensive tackle. I don't know. Like I said, it's a mixed bag. So now you get to the guys that you're like, oh, maybe he'll be good. Maybe. But it's hard to say. It's hard to say. But what we do know for a fact is that the Steelers picked up Joey Porter, and then they were also there to capitalize later in the draft. And I thought with the moves that they made this year, the Steelers are closer to returning to relevancy. And I know last season that they were still playing for playoff games, but we all kind of knew that the Steelers weren't like a serious threat. And Mike Tomlin, man, that front office, I do think that they're a better football team this year. And Bill said, I honestly think my Giants did the best they could. Steelers have historically done really great drafting and developing linebackers. Yeah. So that is a great point. I believe Joey Porter, his father, played for the Steelers, which I'm just now putting together. Unless that's not his dad. But Joey Porter does say junior. So what do you guys? Okay, so they get Joey Porter Jr. in the second. That's it. They get one more. Kenau Benton, defensive tackle. And Kenau Benton was projected like top 7 defensive tackle in the draft. Okay. Now then Darnell Washington falls all the way down, and nobody can believe it. They're like, how is Darnell Washington? Even Tom Grassi, when the Packers were on the board, was pleading that Darnell Washington would get drafted. Darnell Washington, apparently the owners were worried about his knees were inflamed during the combine. But this dude was considered, I think, number 3 or number 2. And the first 2, I literally wrote about all of this. Why can't I just open it? Here we go. And then there's a couple players I'm going to have you guys look into that are really freaking funny. God, I guess I forgot to send one of them to myself. That sucks. That's a whole entire segment. So anyway, the Darnell Washington. So you get to this point right here where you're 4 picks in, and you have very, very impressive picks. Darnell Washington, 6'7", 264, but he runs a 4.6 40-yard dash. His comparison was Mercedes Lewis, but he was even more different than Mercedes Lewis. He looked a little more, I forget if it was he looked more powerful or he looked more lucid, just kind of not just like a big body, but somebody that knows how to carry his weight well. Okay, so then you get to the 5th pick, and you get another Wisconsin guy, okay? But then round 7, Corey Trice comes off the board from Purdue. And I'm telling you, the fact that Corey Trice fell all the way to the 7th round is mind-blowing. And the Steelers are so smart for drafting him. So, look, we get through their entire draft, and they have, I would say they have 5 players that are going to be good. And then you have a couple that we have to wait and see. Okay. Let's go to the Giants now. Because the Giants did what I like the most that they did is that they capitalized on talent falling as well with the wide receiver position. The wide receiver that they drafted in the second round was projected to go a lot earlier than he went. Now, New York Giants. Here we go. So the New York Giants, okay, Deonte Banks, solid pickup. I think he was ranked the 7th best cornerback in the draft. Now there weren't 7 cornerbacks. Steve. So there weren't 7 better cornerbacks, but the Giants wanted this one. So when I clicked on his bio, and look, I don't only strictly go off of what the draft sheets say, but when I see something like that, I do get curious. I wonder, oh, okay, so all the scouts, put him at 7, but yet he's the 3rd cornerback taken in the draft. Okay, so I think a lot of those scenarios have a lot to do with the interview process and the maturity. Because imagine that you got a guy that's talented at 4 and 5 and 6, but you call them and you can tell that they're not serious about football. They're still immature. And then you have a guy at 7, that actually, let's say, got his master's degree while he was in college for chemical engineering, and he already started his own private charity, and, he can't wait to make you're drafting the character of your team. So you have to have an identity as a team. And this is kind of my problem with the Cowboys. For a while, it just felt like the Cowboys were like, you know what? We just want the most talented people. And we'll compromise character. Like we'll, and what you end up with a very diverse group of people. I will say, which I do believe is a good thing. But I believe you can still have diversity inside of a culture that has been established. Okay, so Jerry Jones, would just get, whereas some other people that may be like one of the 3 wickets. Does this guy fit our values that we have as a team, whatever they are? I'm sure that most of them are very cliche. Play for each other. You're not selfish. You give it your all. You're there for your teammates, etc. But when you don't have those things, you just draft whoever. And when you draft whoever, you can never have that year where you're like, today I'm going to build my values. It's like, it takes, a while to do that. Like you may need, 8 drafts before you can say every person that's been drafted in this building or I've acquired from trade is all wired the way I want them to be. And then from there on, whoever you draft, it just kind of falls into place. But when you draft based on talent, you never get to a place where you have that, and you can never build anything. And I'm learning a lot about this because Sean Payton said that the most important thing he wanted to do when he got into Denver was to build culture. And Bill, your comment just distracted me. He said he's not that chemical engineering type, but I hope he does well. Oh, I thought you said he didn't take. I thought it said he didn't take chemical engineering. I was like, no, not what I'm saying at all. And I wouldn't say like that's just one example, but I'm just saying somebody that you value them over the other people, just character, right? It's an interview. This whole entire thing is an interview, and your team is hiring you. So it's like no different than when we go to a job interview, we have to present ourselves a certain way. If you present yourself like, I'm really good, someone's going to take me no matter what, I don't have to suck up to nobody, then you're going to have teams that, you're right. They will take you because you're falling down the board. But you're also maybe missing out on opportunities to go in other places. And I think something like that may be the reason that the 7th rated corner went. Now, This was a heavy cornerback draft. There was a lot of really good talent in the cornerback range. This was a really good year for cornerbacks. Really good. Okay. So when we got into the second round, there was a receiver that was falling down the board. Now, no, in the third round. But in the second round, the the Giants had to do something because the Eagles just had Jalen Carter and God, I'm drawing a blank on the other dude's name. But the other guy that they took at 29, Smith, Olave Smith, Olave Smith. That sounds right. So look, the Giants are probably wanting a wide receiver at this point, but this is probably the point where. So this is the second round. That means everybody from the Giants just went home and they all called each other probably, and they're like, I can't sleep. I just got so much on my mind. One of them being that the two of the, best four players in the draft just went on to the Super Bowl defending champion or Super Bowl appearing team that happens to be in our division. We can't get a receiver yet. We have to get a center. We're going to have to solidify this offensive line. They go D end, we got to go center. So that's what they do. The Giants, they pick a center in the second round, John Michael Schmitz, which even if all he was the coolest name potentially in the draft, like who else would you say a name that long? You would just pick one. You would say John Schmitz or you would say John Michael. But it's not even hyphenated. Like I've dated Latina women that are, blank blank because it's their culture to, keep their last name and then take the guys. This isn't hyphenated. This is just John Michael Schmitz. Is his middle name included or is his last name Michael Schmitz? I need to know that really bad. And I think he owes that to us. You can't put 3 names in here. Everyone else has 2 names besides you. We need an explanation. What if he just did it because he thought, I can? What if they just said, what's your name? I heard that Kevin Durant's not 6'11". I heard that he's like 6'7", but he's just been writing 6'11" since he's in high school. And now people just believe it. Okay, so here we go. Jalen Hyatt. This is a steal. You go into the 4th round right here. They trade from Cleveland through Houston and Los Angeles Rams. This draft pick has been around. This was not a faithful draft pick. This was a little slut draft pick. So here it is. The Giants move all the way up. And I think this is genius. You have to move up here. Okay, Jalen Hyatt was the 7th ranked wide receiver in this draft, and he had no business being undrafted by this point. And the Giants, they crushed it. They moved up and they got their guys. They got the 2nd ranked center. They got a wide receiver that can come in and make an immediate impact. I believe his comparison was Tyreek Hill. Explosive, super fast. He's not going to break many tackles, but his speed makes him a threat. He's a downfield guy. And it did say that just the film that I was watching that he has a tendency to drop some passes. So when you just watch a player's highlights, the drops aren't there. So what I did today was I look at like Tennessee, Alabama, watch the game. Okay. So then you can see, and then that's difficult because the game highlights are the game's highlights. So a dropped pass sometimes doesn't even go inside unless it's a touchdown in some kind of game altering play. So, but that's what I had to do. And it's a lot easier to do when you're trying to scout defensive tackles, defensive linemen, offensive linemen, because you can watch them every play offensively or defensively. It's a lot harder with a receiver. So anyway, That's what I was doing today, and I was like, Jalen Hyatt, man, this dude's good. And then I did a little more research, and I found him. I found him drafted in the third round. Did I say fourth? I meant third. No, I'm not there yet. The third round. Okay. And this guy could have been gone in the first round. I think he would have been drafted early second round. If I had to put him right where he probably should have been drafted, I would say second round, pick 15, second round, pick 10. So, and the margin for dropping is only, it gets wider the worse the player is. So if you're a mid player that should be drafted in the fourth, it's like you could not even get drafted. But if you're, a top 10 receiver, it's like you should be drafted by the second round in the 15th pick. And that means you're really good if you can say that. Okay, so anyway, the Giants, moving on. They continue to draft players, and it looks like they didn't make any draft picks in the fourth round, which would make sense because they probably had to trade the fourth round pick to be able to move up to get Tennessee's wide receiver. So then we go into the fifth round, and we see that the Giants are picking Eric Gray, who was the 10th rated running back in the league. Out of Oklahoma, Eric Gray was an efficient one-cut runner. He has good contact balance. He runs hard. As a receiver, he's effective in route running. He's a reliable check down. He needs to get stronger, but he's willing to step up in pass protection, which is big. And you can see here that the Eagles are going to try to wear down that Philly defensive line. They're going to have to wear them down. Okay, because they have to do something. And the best way to wear out a defensive line is to establish a really solid run game. But you can't have a run game without a really good center. Okay, and you can't really set up the pass without establishing the run. But when you do, now you have another receiver to throw to. It all comes, the Giants draft all makes sense. It's not like, they're just grabbing random stuff. Like, oh, yeah, because that's how Jerry Jones feels at times. It's like, who's the best player on the board? Turbin, but he's a punt returner. Get him. So, sixth round, the Giants pick Trey Hawkins, the third. Not to get it twisted, he's the third. He's a cornerback. He's 6'3". I love my lengthy cornerbacks. He was a 2-year starter at Old Dominion. Love to see a school like Old Dominion get a player drafted. He's tall and long, good top end speed and quickness. Hawkins is tough and tends to wrap up. And look, that's all it says for the pre-draft analysis, because he went to Old Dominion. They don't have people going to Old Dominion flying out on flights. There's no sky. So I could appreciate it, because one of the questions I ask is, if you go to a school like Old Dominion and no NFL teams are sending planes out to go watch your players play, then how did you get drafted? How did you get noticed? You must have been doing something. It's one thing to go unnoticed because you're playing at Oklahoma and there's just guys that are too good. We actually saw that happen to Texas. There was a couple dudes on the defensive line. Immediately when that draft was over, all 32 teams were calling, trying to sign undrafted free agents. Immediately. I wish we could be a part of the undrafted free agent signings that happen immediately after the draft, because it would be way probably crazier than the draft, because the draft is very organized. That's just straight chaos. You would need an insider for every team going live at the same time. I mean, it'd be insane. So anyway, I'm going to be honest. I didn't look into his film out of Old Dominion, but I will. I will check into him. And then Jordan Riley out of Oregon. I tried so hard to find this guy. You have no idea what I went through trying to find this guy. It was like he went to Nebraska. Then he was at where he was at I think it was North Carolina. No, it might have been Nebraska. And then he transferred to Oregon. So the whole time I'm looking for this mother effer, he's not even on the team. And then I figure it out. I'm like, oh, so he only played 1 year there? So he transferred last year. And then I found him in an interview standing outside the Ducks training facility. And he's like, they're asking him, they're like, why do you think it didn't work out in Nebraska? This was before Oregon season started. And they were kind of putting him on the spot. They were like, did you come here because you weren't good enough to start over there? That's pretty much what they were asking. And he was like, I wanted to win a national championship. I wanted to go somewhere where I had a realistic opportunity to win a national championship. He wore number 91. I had to go to, if you go to YouTube and just type Jordan Riley highlights, you get a basketball player, by the way. There's no Jordan Riley. And Jordan, he spells his name with an O. Don't make the mistake I did. If you try Jordan with an A, like normal Jordan, you're going to get a basketball player. He's actually pretty good. I ended up watching it. This is Jordan Riley, and there's nothing. So you're going to have to watch the actual Ducks. And I ended up watching the Ducks and it wasn't Alabama, Ohio State. It was Oregon, Ohio State. And it was actually a crazy good game. But then I realized that I was watching a game from 2 years ago, and Jordan Riley wasn't there 2 years ago. And then I couldn't find anything from last year. And then I just got pissed off. And I was like, why? I've spent the last hour trying to find a 7th round pick. And normally I wouldn't be mad about it, but there's nothing on the internet. And it's like, you went to Oregon. My brother, when he was getting recruited by FIU and Vanderbilt, had more tape on YouTube than a guy that is trying to get into the NFL. I mean, obviously he didn't need it, but look, he got drafted in the 7th round. I mean, he almost didn't make the cut. And all that to say, I really think the Giants did a great job. And then their last pick, Javarius Owens. And Javarius Owens is a safety from Houston. He was graded at a 40 overall, but I mean, you're at the very end. So I think this is a guy that they got based on who he can become. This is not somebody that's like, oh, going to come in right away and make a difference, but they may be like, hey, you know, when you're at the casino and you're like, this is my safe money, you know, this is my, you know, risk money. This is maybe the Giants' one big risk reward pick here. It says he has length. The instincts are enough range to cover the deep half. He did not run at the combine. He doesn't cover ground like a center fielder on tape. And but he's an active run defender who doesn't shy away from contact. So he's just a stopping the run guy. You know, maybe a first, second down guy, but is he going to help you out when Jalen Hurts is slinging the ball? I'm not sure. Bill said, we did so good this draft. Yes, on the UDFA market. Philly already got Eli Rax. Steve, I like watching these geese myself. They're more aggressive and sometimes attack idiots who get too close. Great entertainment on a boring day. I like watching the geese myself. The Ducks. Steve, that is such a dad joke. he literal ducks. Literal ducks. I think we did pretty good. So here's hoping. No, I do. I think you guys did good. If I had to sum it all up, I would say you got 4 players. 3 of them are going to be really good. One of them I think should be good. And then 3 of them, we're going to have to wait and see. And that's how every team should be feeling right now. Seattle is another team that doesn't have to totally feel like that because in some cases they did something nobody did in the draft. They got 2 players that are the best at their position. Like Houston got Will Anderson, who was the best edge rusher, but then they had CJ Stroud. So even the team that picked 2 and 3 got the second best quarterback and the best rusher. That's the second best thing, but the Seahawks got Devin Witherspoon, the number 1 corner, and then they turned around and got Jackson Smith out of Ohio State, who was the number 1 receiver in this draft. So that is going to be something rare. So what I did was I was actually making matchups I'm looking forward to. So this is something I'm going to make a short on this. Okay, this is going to be a YouTube short. Nobody's put anything like this on the internet. This took a lot of work, and you can tell this is like, you got to look at a player, you got to see where they're drafted, and then you got to look at the opponents next year. Who is that team playing? And then you see, okay, what first round pick matchups are we going to have? Quick example to make this make sense. Carolina plays Houston next year. We're going to get CJ Stroud versus Bryce Young. Okay. So yeah, the schedule's not released with dates, but the opponents have been released. They were released 2 months ago now. And I went through the first round picks, and I pulled out some of my favorite matchups that are going to happen next year in the first round. Okay. And this took a couple hours to put together. It seems very simple now that I'm just presenting it, but I think you guys are going to love this. Okay, we got the Los Angeles. I don't have dates. You guys know that, though. The Los Angeles Rams at Baltimore Ravens. That's going to be Devin Witherspoon at Zay Flowers. So Zay Flowers was the wide receiver out of, was it Penn State or BCU? Zay Flowers. No, it's Boston College. Yeah. And Devin Witherspoon, the number 1 safety or number 1 corner against the number 2 wide receiver. Zay Flowers on Devin Witherspoon on Zay Flowers. Well, that first one was rusty. Glad that's out of the way. Texas versus Tennessee. We got Will Anderson Jr. versus Peter Skoronski. Peter Skoronski was the number 1 offensive lineman in this draft. Okay, and Tennessee moved back, and then they moved back, and then they moved up, and they got their initial guy with some picks. They got the best offensive lineman, according to most people, and Will Anderson's going to be the guy that's lined up across him. And this game's going to happen twice because it's in division. Jacksonville at New Orleans. This is going to turn into the Anton Harrison versus Brian Breesy. So Anton Harrison is an offensive lineman that Jacksonville picked up. This guy is supposed to be the real deal. He was, according to the ratings, he was the 7th best offensive lineman in the draft, and he was Jacksonville's first overall pick. Okay, and then the Saints went on and got Brian Breesy. It reminds me of Brian Greasy, but they got Brian Breesy from Clemson, the number 4 defensive tackle. Cincinnati at Arizona, you have Miles Murphy, defensive tackle, versus Paris Johnson Jr., offensive lineman. So Miles Murphy, drafted by Cincinnati, and he was the number 3 ranked defensive end out of Clemson. And he's going to be going up against Paris Johnson from Arizona. And Paris Johnson was the number 2 offensive lineman. So we got to see these young guys battle right away. Chicago at KC. Rick's Bears drafted Darnell Wright. They move out of that one spot. They move down. Then they move down again. They finally find Darnell Wright sitting there looking pretty at number 10. And he was the number 4 ranked tackle. And Felix Anudike Kansas City's last pick in the draft is a defensive end. Okay. And he was the 4th ranked defensive end. He was out of Kansas State. And this dude's going to be a problem on the field. So I did matchups against each other. Now we're going to have positional battles. Okay. So Bryce Young versus CJ Stroud is a positional battle. They're not going against each other on the field, but they're going against each other nonetheless. So Houston at Carolina, Bryce Young versus CJ Stroud. I'm circling that one. Super excited. Wouldn't be surprised if the NFL throws that game on Thursday night, week 1, or something like that. No, because Thursday night's the season opener. Thursday night, week 2. Mark it. I said it here first. Week 2, Thursday night football, Amazon Prime is going to be televising the Bryce Young versus CJ Stroud, Houston versus Carolina, because this is a game that would have been on Amazon Prime and nobody would have watched it. And now there's an opportunity for the NFL to make a shit ton of money for a Houston Carolina game where just 5 months ago, nobody would have watched. Okay. Green Bay at Los Angeles Rams. We have Luke Van Ness going against Tyree Wilson. Okay, that's going to be fun. Who's going to get the most sacks? A lot of Green Bay Packer fans are really pissed off that they didn't go receiver there. But they got Luke Van Ness, and then we have the Los Angeles Rams, okay? And then Atlanta and Detroit. You're going to love this one. Bijan Robinson versus Jahmyr Gibbs. The top 2 running backs in this draft. Atlanta plays at Detroit next year, okay? Los Angeles Chargers at Minnesota. You have Quentin Johnson versus Jordan Addison. 2 receivers, ranked 2, ranked 3, going at each other in Minnesota. Obviously, Minnesota probably has another receiver that's a bigger threat over there in Justin Jefferson, but Quentin Johnson versus Jordan Addison. It's crazy. Look at all these games. These people immediately come in. The NFL got so much better in the last 3 days. Philly at Tampa. Jalen Carter versus Kalia Cansey. That was the number 2 defensive tackle. Jalen Carter was the number 1 defensive tackle. So you got 1 versus 2. Who's going to get the most sacks? Washington at New York Giants. Emmanuel Forbes versus Deontay Banks. Emmanuel Forbes was drafted by Washington. And obviously we know Deontay Banks is a cornerback. So I'm looking for that matchup. Or not matchup, but which cornerback performs better. Emmanuel Forbes was the 6th or the 3rd ranked cornerback, number 3 overall. And the Giants picked about 8 picks later and got the Deontay Banks, the 5th overall corner. Thought it was the 7th. Then we got 2 more. Jacksonville at New Orleans. Oh, I moved that one twice. Okay, so this is the last one. I wrote Las Vegas Raiders at Buffalo. And I cheated on this one. And full disclosure, I used a player that wasn't drafted in the first round because I think this will be the most fun matchup. Michael Mayer versus Dalton Kincaid. The top 2 tight ends in the draft. And even though Michael Mayer slipped to the 2nd round, I still wanted to put that in there. And I'm sure there's going to be a lot more that come to mind. I basically was just staring at the first 32 picks and just trying to find a pattern. I even went as deep as to see if there were 2 players that played on the same team. If they're, like, let's say an offensive tackle from Ohio State is, and then there's a defensive tackle from Ohio State, and now they're on 2 different teams, but those teams are playing each other. I was seeing if Anthony Richardson was playing the Eagles. I was looking for Colts Eagles because, Florida Georgia is a big rivalry. Sorry, this guy is actually, I'm interviewing tomorrow, And I'm going to put this one out for you guys right when it gets done. This is going to be me interviewing a Ravens fan. And by the way, what a great time to interview a Ravens fan. We almost did it last week, and that would have been no good now that we know Lamar Jackson's your quarterback and you got great wide receivers. I mean, it just makes more sense. So definitely looking forward to doing that. So anyway, those are the matchups I'm looking forward to. Is that a third generation greasy? Oh, yeah. LVN equals JSN. And this is not even a question. We will crush the Commanders. I got to say, the Commanders got better defensively. And not only that, they're getting Chase Young back. So I could understand, the Giants feeling like, the Commanders kind of suck, which they kind of do right now. And let's be real, okay? Not every team can be good. It's just never happened. There has to be bad teams. And Washington's in transition with their ownership group. They don't really have an identity. Players don't really want to be there. Who's the quarterback? I get it. But I do think that this Commanders team has a way of just playing really good defense. And if they get coached well, I don't think that they will be a bottom feeder of the league. Okay? I think the Bears are going to make a step in the right direction, but I think the Bears are also not going to be a bottom feeder. And it's very challenging to figure out who it's going to be. You almost get stuck thinking that it's going to be Houston again, right? Because you're looking for a bottom feeder. And that's what I started this episode saying. Every year it feels like the whole league is getting better and better and better, but it has to somehow balance itself out, right? I mean, I would love to run the numbers. Like if every team were to have the best record possible, what would everybody be? Well, I think everyone would be 500, right? Everybody would be, well, in an 18-game schedule, there would be no 500. But yeah, so we know that there's going to be a team like the Eagles that doesn't go 9-8. They're going to go maybe undefeated. I don't know. So who's going to be the team that loses more than 7 games to balance that out? Well, I think the Saints, okay? I think the Colts for sure, because Anthony Richardson's going to take some time, and plus there's just been a lot of instability going on over there. I do think that they're going to start going in the right direction, but I think it's going to take about 3 years before they're, back. Houston, it's going to take some time, but there's been teams have completely flipped over the past 3 years, including the Bengals and Jacksonville are probably my big two that have totally changed. Jacksonville was the first overall pick 2 years in a row, and they won a total of one football game. At one point, they had won one football game in their last 25, 27 games. You know how hard it is to suck that bad? And then to go to the playoffs and come back from 28. I got Jacksonville as a dark horse because I do think, Calvin Ridley's going to be good. I'm not supposed to be doing predictions right now, but Calvin Ridley's going to have over 1,500 yards receiving. And then I was going to go over the Broncos because obviously we didn't get a first-round pick because we are still paying Russell Wilson. And that is all that anger has completely resurfaced because of the draft. So that's how I'm doing. But after waiting around, Denver did move up into the second round. And with the last pick in the second round, Denver drafted Marvin Mims. Marvin Mims, beloved by the Oklahoma alumni. He was a strong slot receiver. He was drafted to replace KJ Hamler, not Jerry Jeudy. And I do think he's going to come in and make an immediate impact, or Denver wouldn't have moved up here. So when you consider Sean Payton, okay, we got, as of right now, we have Tim Patrick coming back from his injury. We have Cortland Sutton, Jerry Jeudy, and now Marvin Mims. That is 4 wide receivers that I can go to war with against any team. Is if you have a quarterback. If you have a quarterback, those guys, I have confidence that you could win the whole entire thing. You could win a Super Bowl with those 4 receivers. You need a lot of other things to happen, but those 4 receivers can get the job done. Absolutely. Okay. So they get Marvin Mims, and I was really happy about that. Then we go into the third round, and only 4 picks into it, the Broncos draft Drew Sanders, who's an inside linebacker, but he was ranked the 3rd best linebacker in the draft. He's versatile. He can play off the ball. He can rush off the edge. He's an instinctive run defender who takes at good angles. So they added a really good linebacker, and there was a key sentence in the draft analysis here. It says he's great at matching up with running backs in coverage. The game that I went to at Seattle, the constant theme, and I knew from week 1, hey, why are these running backs getting 7 yards every time they run a dump off? Oh, our linebackers can't cover running backs. And it was just frustrating to see. It was like either they're stupid or they suck. Either one is not okay. We either need better players. I don't care if they're on practice squad somewhere. Get me some guys that can run stride for stride with some running backs. Or the coaching really is just really bad. It was like if they could have fixed that, you know how many field goals Denver gave up because of those dump off to the running backs where it's 3rd and 12 and somehow they dump it off to the running back and now they get a first down and then it ends in a field goal. Denver, don't forget, for most of the season had the best defense of points per game. Denver held every team under 16 points most of the game. The only reason that if you look it up now, it's got Denver at 12 or 13 is because they gave up 51 points on Christmas. And that just destroyed, all the work that they put in all season. But until Christmas, they were number 1 in points per game giving up. And I always said, if we could just score 17 points, we can win. And by the end of the year, there was a stat that came out that said if Denver had scored 17 points in regulation, they would be 13-1. And we were going into week 15. And we only had 2 wins or 3 wins. So we don't need much. But to think that defense was elite and they can get better. And we just need Sean Payton to get us 17 points. That's what we need. 20 would be better, but we need a couple touchdowns, at least a couple touchdowns a game, and a couple field goals. That doesn't seem like too much to ask for. It really doesn't. Okay? So then Denver gets the linebacker. Great value. I'm feeling good about it. I don't know how great he's going to be, but he did really good in all this testing and stuff like that. Then we get the wild card. And we talked about it, Riley Moss. I look at the Denver Post press conference immediately after, and there's a reporter going, he goes, Sean, I swear, this is right after we did our stream. He goes, Sean, you coached in Seattle with Jason Sehorn, and he goes, I don't want to sound... what did he say? I don't want to generalize it. And Sean Payton cuts him off. He's like, what? We drafted a white cornerback? Is that what your question is? And the guy's like, yeah. And Sean Payton was like, just, dude, like, it's not weird. Yeah, we drafted a white cornerback. Just say it. You don't have to dance around it. And it's true. There's not white cornerbacks in the NFL. So when we do draft one, I got to say, my initial reaction was I need to see some tape. I need to see some tape. I need to see this dude. Why um why is he special? You know, what makes him special? And I figured it out. And when you follow a team as hard as I do, you can kind of put these pieces together. And Sean Payton says it perfectly. He says there are many athletes that are not football players, but it's hard to find a football player that's an athlete. And he's talking about NFL players. There are many athletes that can just do amazing things with their body and how fast they are, and but they're just not football players. They're not instinctive. They don't have a nose for the football. You know when you're watching a game and they throw that dump off pass and you and the camera angles are still trying to figure out where the ball is, and then you see your linebacker already has his helmet in the middle of the dude's chest pad and he drives him into the dirt, and you're just like pumped up. That type of instinctive, that's a football player. It's not about being an athlete. It's something that you have to just be born with, and you either have it or you don't. We've seen so many number one overall picks go into the draft and become nothing. We saw Cleveland in 2001, I believe, take the best athlete at the combine. He was the best athlete people said they had ever seen, and he ended up starting like 9 games in his whole career. Not a football player. Steve said Jason Sehorn was great to watch back in the day. I bet he was. I'm going to watch some film on him. But Sean Payton didn't say any of that in this press conference, but I heard him say it earlier. And when I looked at the tape on Riley Moss and I listened to the way that he was talking about him, he was like, we spent a lot of time with him. And he said, look, I know there's a lot of people that are going to say, well, is he, because he played safety and he moved a corner. So, you know, the combine had him listed as a defensive back, but they wouldn't write cornerback. So Sean said right there, he's like, he's a cornerback. He will not be a safety. He is here to play corner and to compete for the number 2 corner spot. And I started watching the film and I'm like, this dude just is one of those guys where wherever the play is happening, that's where you'll find Riley Moss. He has a nose for the football. He's just a pure football player. One of those guys that you would play with in Pop Warner and you just felt a little discouraged because it was like he just got it. You know, it's like he just was better than everybody else and you weren't really sure why. You know, cuz it's not about love. Nobody loved football more than me. But there might have been a guy that was just better and I just didn't know what it was. It's that Ness. It's your name with the Ness at the end of it. It was his Riley Ness that took over. And this Riley Ness is why Sean Payton drafted him. He did Zoom calls, Zoom interviews, person interviews, private training, physicals. Denver spent so much time on Riley Moss that I wonder if they felt compromised, like they had to pick him. The only thing I didn't love about the pick is that they traded up to get him. And they traded with Seattle, which we should never even think about doing again. So I like the pick, the football player. You know, we'll see how it pans out. I'm going to stay optimistic about it, but I also 2 years ago we drafted Michael Ojemudia in the 3rd round, and scared me. And he did not pan out. He did not work. So I'm a little hesitant on 3rd round corners right now. And then Denver did something different than what was in the plans. So we go into the 4th round, and Denver was supposed to pick somebody, or was it the 5th round? or no, they didn't have a pick in the 4th round. And then they did have a pick in the 5th round around 160. And Denver trades it to the Saints. And the Saints basically make a deal with Sean Payton that they will send their tight end to Denver. Why do you have a cough? My dog's like coughing. He's never done that before. So their tight end is Trotman, and Adam Trotman. And you might not know who he is because he came in during COVID, and nobody got good publicity during COVID because the combine wasn't happening and stuff. But Adam Trotman he made history. He was the first player to get drafted from his school that he attended. And it was such a school that you've never heard of. I have to see, here it is. He went to why would it put his high school here and not his let me see really quick. I want to see if you guys know what this school is or not. Here we go. Okay. Adam Trotman, here he is. He is okay, so they're just going to tell me he was drafted in the 3rd round, but they're not going to tell me where he went to school. I'm about to throw this computer. College. College, Dayton. He went to Dayton, okay? So if you guys know where that is, he redshirted his true freshman year and changed positions from quarterback to tight end. As a redshirt freshman, he caught 24 passes for 238 yards and 3 touchdowns, blah, blah, blah. That's a freshman. Then we get to a junior. Trotman led the team with 41 receptions, 604 yards, and 9 touchdowns. So you do see him progressively get better every single year. And this dude changed positions at, in college. And Sean Payton with the Taysom Hill, he loves having tight ends and wide receivers that used to play quarterback so he can, dial up some of those type plays. So in his professional career, he was drafted in the 3rd round with the 105th pick overall. So Denver, Sean Payton's like, hey, there's already a guy that could be really good. I think he still has what it takes, but Drew Brees left and it was kind of weird. So Denver ends up just sending a 7th round pick and the 5th for the tight end. And I like that. Like I said before, I would rather get good players than have a lot of average players or a lot of guys you just don't know. Okay? And that was what it was like pretty much drafting for a Broncos fan, besides probably my favorite pick, J.L. Skinner. J.L. Skinner was out of Boise State. He was the 8th ranked safety in the draft. And here's the thing. He's 6'4", 209 pounds, but he drives through contact. Like if you ever felt nostalgic about hard-hitting safeties and how they're not there anymore, check this dude's film out, J.L. Skinner. And I also looked into it. J.L. is not short for anything. That's just what his name is, J.L. And I think that's cool too. His name's J.L. It doesn't stand for anything. But he's 209 pounds, and he is a heavy-hitting dude. Okay? So I think Denver's trying to set up, J.L. Skinner with Justin Simmons. But at the end of the day, he is a very good in run support. But if he gets beat, he doesn't bounce back super fast because he's 6'4". It's hard to get that body moving. So it'll be interesting to see how he does, but I think he'll be definitely good for, first and second down on the field and the potential to see where it goes. But one thing I do appreciate about only having 5 picks, and the fifth was Alex Forsyth. It was 2 picks away from Mr. Irrelevant, and it was a center from Oregon. He was the 7th ranked center in the draft, 7th ranked center. And look, we drafted Lloyd Cushenberry from LSU 2 years ago, and he was the number 1 center in that draft, but he fell all the way to the 2nd round, and Denver drafted him at 2nd, I believe. Might have been 3rd. And he's terrible. And we've addressed our entire line besides center. So I thought it was a little strange that Denver, got a center at the very end. They must just feel like everything's fine. They know something I don't, obviously. But Alex Forsyth, 7th ranked center out of Oregon. Me and Bill both got some Oregon players in the 7th round for our team. You got Jordan Riley on defense. I got the center. So one thing I was saying, though, I can appreciate about picking, not a bunch of players is that I know everybody's name. I know everything about them. And so when I see them on the field, it's not like it's like I know what round he came in. I know if he outperforms the expectations. And sometimes when we've had like 9 players come in, it's like you watch the YouTube video of the guy you just drafted. You see the comment, "Welcome to Denver." And then you close your phone. And then a week later, you see a guy make a tackle and you're like, did we draft him or was he a free agent? Where did that guy come from? So I can appreciate the small amount of people. Ohio, she's. So that is where that dude went to. That's where that tight end went. That's in Ohio. I didn't know that. Adam Trotman went to school in Ohio. And then we got JMS, so I'm ecstatic. And who's JMS again? JMS is that short for somebody? Or is this a quiz? JMS, JMS Jordan and Jalen Hyatt. So yeah, I'm pumped. Well, yeah, just let me know in the comment what it is. And then I will say one other team that picked a player that I don't think is necessary. Now, I'm going to give you the team that I think picked a very good player, and but it wasn't necessary. Okay? The Atlanta Falcons. They drafted Bijan Robinson. Okay? Bijan Robinson. Now, they had Cordell Patterson, who was very effective last year, but even more than that, Tyler Algier. Is it Algier? Tyler Algier. He ran for over 1,000 yards last season, and nobody seems to realize that. Like, he wasn't just if you're running for 1,000 yards, you're not a role player, really. I mean, you have a role on the team. You're not just like a off the bench guy. You have a very important job. Like when Denver went to the playoffs in 2005, they had Tatum Bell and Mike Bell. And they both had 1,000 yards rushing that season, and we went to the AFC Championship. If you can get 2,000-yard running backs, that's just as good as having one running back run for 2,000 yards, which is something that we value a lot when somebody's able to pull that off. So they already have 2 running backs that I believe are capable of running for 1,000 yards. So where does Bijan Robinson fit exactly? Because if Bijan Robinson's the most polished running back in this draft, then where is somebody being traded? I understand that Arthur Smith loves running the football, dialing up different runs. I have to believe that the only thing I can think of is that he's going to run a 2 running back set like 70% of the time. Like an I formation type deal, and just substitute one of them and always have it rotating with one. And that might be like some next level stuff. You think about it, you have Bijan Robinson and Tyler Algier, okay, and then after 10 snaps, whoever's got the most stamina, say Tyler Algier comes off the field, in comes Cordell Patterson. Then after 10 snaps, he runs off the field, in comes Tyler Algier and Cordell Patterson, and so on. And you always have fresh legs, but you also have 2 running backs on the field at the same time. That's what I think's happening. And if it's not happening, then I really don't understand this pick. John Michael Schmitz, our number 1 center for the next 10 years. Denver needs another Terrell Davis. He definitely is on my top 5 Broncos players of all time. Still have as a starting lineup rookie figure with mustache and all. Oh, still have his starting lineup rookie figure. Is it like a card or is it like an action figure? That's awesome. Yeah, Terrell Davis is amazing, man. I love him. And he was actually a podcast I watched, DNVR. They were lucky enough that he came in to do an interview this year. And it was like, man, there he is in the flesh. So I'm going to end with this. And it's just a couple more notes that I wanted to mention, okay? Sean Tucker. I got to see. So there were a couple players that I looked into and I really liked. And Syracuse running back so Sean Tucker goes undrafted, okay? Sean Tucker is a player that I think should be signed immediately, and he will be, okay? He is extremely underrated. He's 5'10", 210 pounds. He was projected mainly in the 4th round. I wrote this in the 4th round, okay? I truly believe Tucker should be a 2nd round prospect. Tucker's 2021 year was amazing. He was first team All-American in Syracuse's single season rushing record. He broke it. He had a good 2022, but still wasn't as good as the prior year. He became the only player in Syracuse history to post back-to-back 1,000-yard rushing and 250-yard receiving seasons. Tucker also finished his career 3rd in rushing yards per game, 7th most rushing touchdowns, and 7th in all-purpose yards in program history. He missed an opportunity to raise his stock when he missed the combine in Syracuse's pro day with a medical issue. And that's really, I feel like, what happened here. I could see Tucker, and this is the comparison, a poor man's Bijan Robinson. Productive in every, and I know a lot of people might read that and feel like that's not a good thing. But there's a lot of movies out there where I'm like, this kind of feels like a poor man's Matthew McConaughey, and it's still a good movie. Sure, it's not Matthew McConaughey, but sometimes it's better to have a poor man's Matthew McConaughey, because then the movie can make more money because you're not spending a bunch of money on the actors. All right? Maybe we want a poor man's Bijan Robinson so we can get a discount and get most of the same things that he does, just maybe doesn't do them, a little bit better. Maybe we just need an 8. We don't need a 10. Okay, so anyway, as for now, the NFL comparison that I saw online was Devin Singletary. I know I kind of knocked on the Bills running back in my last episode when I was talking about Buffalo needing a better running back, but Tucker was similar. And I when I made this in the 4th round, I thought for sure that he was going to end up going in the 5th, and then he ended up going completely undrafted. So Sean Tucker from Syracuse is a person that I was watching to see where he would fall to, and I was going to mention it on tonight's episode, but it never happened, okay? So, and then there was a couple more. This was I wrote high risk, high reward. If you guys don't know who this dude is, you have to look this up. His Kansas State University, Vaughn. I didn't write his first name. Just put Vaughn, Kansas State, like Vince Vaughn. The guy led college football in all-purpose yardage last season. Okay, he finished all-purpose yards last season. Finished 4th in 2021, scoring 34 touchdowns in that time. And I know a lot of people always say, "Oh, well, all-purpose yards is inflated from punt returners." Not this time, because he only returned 7 kickoffs for 145 yards over a 3-year span. So his production was virtually only as a runner and a receiver. And he accomplished most of it during elite competition. He had an 88-yard touchdown against the Toto. Remember that guy that was drafted from the Alabama program in his final game? Alabama, he went off. He went off against Alabama. Okay, he is literally a doppelganger of Darren Sproles. And here's the thing. Okay, here's the thing about him. You're never gonna believe this. He's 5'5". He's 5'5". He is very, very small. Okay, and I had to watch the film, and I really think it's working out for him. I think that when you're that small, you get, you're elusive. You can move through tackles. I was watching people try to tackle him, and they're just not used to having to go that low. So here we are. We're in, I believe, the 6th round at this point. We might have even gotten into the 7th round, and guess who takes him? After all I was talking about Jerry Jones, the Cowboys. They're willing to take him. Deuce Vaughn, here it is, running back. So they take him in the 6th round with the almost towards the very end, almost the 7th round, only like 7 picks outside, 6 picks from the end. And he was picked 5'5", 179, Deuce Vaughn. He had just an amazing highlight film, but honestly, I was reading all these stats about him, pulling all this different information, and then I was like, you know what? I hope Denver gets this guy. And then I watched the YouTube video. The first thing I think is, nope, the NFL's too big. It's like, yeah, he got away with that in college. You're not going to get away with that in the NFL. And then I actually watched the highlights, and I was like, man, he's doing this against Alabama, Clemson. These are good teams he's playing against. And then I thought about the Darren Sproles, and I was like, you know what? This dude's definitely worth taking a shot, because you know what? This is a football player. This is a real pure football player, and I'm happy to see that the Cowboys took him. And it'll be really interesting to see, because obviously Zeke is not there anymore. So you have what's his name? The running back that took over for him. I don't know why I'm drawing a blank right now. Probably because I'm adding, it's was that to take something, you have to leave something, taking all these new names in. I was hoping that you guys put it in there. Cowboys running back. Here, I'll just do depth chart. Okay, here we go. It's Tony Pollard. So Tony Pollard is now the guy, and they just drafted their Tony Pollard of last year. And he's 5'5". He's a tiny guy, man. However small you think he is, he's smaller. Because I read that he was 5'5". Watch him. Look at him on the field, standing next to people. He's at their knees, man. He's at their knees. It's awesome. It's cool. He's probably going to be the shortest active player in the NFL if if he gets the starting job and all goes well, which I believe he will. I believe he will. And I'm trying to see, when was Tony Pollard drafted? He was drafted right here. He was drafted in the 4th round. Okay, so yeah, Tony Pollard was drafted a little earlier by, only 2 rounds, but still. I wanted him. He could have been the next New York Giants Joe Morris. 5'5", like the guy the Cowboys took. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. That's Deuce Vaughn is his name. So I wanted to mention Deuce Vaughn just to put the name in your head. So you guys, when you see him, you're like, hey, I know that guy. Because you're definitely going to have a moment where you're going to go, who is that guy? Now you know when you watch it. And then here there was one more guy. It was the last one. Hyatt. Why did I keep doing this with me not writing people's first names? Hyatt, Alabama, Hyatt. Alabama just brings in so much talent into the NFL. It is amazing. Oh, it was the Giants. The Giants. Oh, I wrote Alabama. Okay. So that was Tennessee's receiver. Okay. So I knew I was missing information. Okay, so here's what I found about your wide receiver. Innovative NFL offense architects have embraced a fundamental principle. Speed creates space. Space creates opportunities. Hyatt, perhaps the top field stretcher in the draft, exemplifies this principle. The reigning, I wasn't sure what this award was. Beltnikoff, Billetnikoff. And I probably sound super ignorant because he's probably a football player that paved the road ahead of me. And I don't know who he is. But anyway, he won that award. He bursted onto the scene as a junior, topping the SEC in receiving yards and touchdowns. This receiver that you got, he was the best receiver in the SEC in receiving yards and touchdowns. I could see you being the leader in receiving yards. It's to do both is like you are clearly ahead of everybody. Okay? Including a historic 5-touchdown performance against who? I don't know. How about Alabama? This is some of the PFF stuff. If you guys ever want to nerd out, just go to PFF's website. PFF revealed that over half of his yards, it was 677, and 8 touchdowns came from deep targets. So that is over half of his receiving yards. They're hitting his ass way downfield. However, concerns remain about whether his impressive college production will translate to the NFL. That is why he fell. Okay? He fell because teams are it's like the Reggie Bush thing. Reggie Bush could do things that nobody else could do. He did have a great NFL career, okay? But compared to what we thought he was going to do, it didn't live up to the hype because Reggie Bush in college was the fastest player on the field. He could run like this, like a video game. He got to the NFL, tried to reverse field, and was like, oh, gosh, these guys are fast. Turn around, someone's there too. So if your only thing is speed, we have to, figure out, okay, is he a football player or is he an athlete with speed? Tyreek Hill's a football player. You know how you can tell? Because naturally he finds pockets and spaces and windows. He knows what the quarterback's thinking. They're on the same page. Just instinctive, very instinctive. Or is he just a sprinter? Because we've seen players come in that, oh, this guy, John Ross, remember the guy that got drafted to Cincinnati? He ran a 4.27, and everyone was like, oh, man, 4.27. Where is he? He's been competing for the Olympics for the 100-meter, I believe, because he's an athlete. He's a sprinter. Is Hyatt a football player? Okay. Well, despite all the concerns that the NFL people have, Hyatt's athletic profile suggests he has an ability to stretch the field for any offense. He, beyond his 4.4 in the 40-yard dash, he had a top speed of 24.29 miles per hour during his 40 run, recorded by something called NGS tracking data. And this is kind of new also, but it placed him as the third fastest player at the 2023 NFL Scouting Combine this year. And, further solidified what everybody knew about him, that he was very explosive. Okay. He registered a 1.50 10-yard split, an 11'3" broad jump, and a 40-inch vertical, with those latter two numbers placing him in the top 10th percentile of wide receivers since 2003. So we got a historically athletic dude on our hands, man. He was ranked the 42nd best player on DJ's big board, which is what ESPN was using. And he was taken at 73. 42nd best player in the draft, taken at 73, almost double that 42. Yeah, I would say the Giants got really good value here. He fell. And what we do know is that we know why he fell. He fell because there are many teams that think he is an athlete, and they don't believe that he can become a very good football player. And I'm sure, they might think, yeah, he'll have a play here and there, but we're looking for, an every down guy. We're not looking for, once every 6 weeks we have a deep guy downfield. Like, that's great and all, but a lot of these, fast guys are also dealing with injuries and stuff like that. So I'll tell you what, Brian Dabble was definitely like, no, he's a football player. And we're going to capitalize on everybody that said that he wasn't, and we're going to take him, and we're going to move up and get him right now. And that's what he did. So I would say I don't want to say high risk, high reward, because I don't believe it's that risky. I believe the numbers speak for themselves. He, at some level, is going to make the Giants better immediately to some degree. But is he going to become Tyreek Hill? Well, that's, you get, Tyreek Hill's an alien, but a player like that, Jalen Waddle, that's your ceiling. And I think it's a great pickup. I really do. We did the best value out of the draft this year. Check my Twitter. Steve said Fred Biltnoff was part of the early Super Bowl teams when Madden was the coach and Ken Stabler was the quarterback during the era. Was their best wide receiver of all time until Tim Brown. Wow. So he was part of the team. What? Oh, okay. So Ken Stabler was the quarterback, and Fred Biltnoff was the wide receiver. So they made the award after him, and even though Tim Brown eventually was the best receiver, he was okay. So he got the award for being the best, the reigning. Okay, so he won it last year. Or he won it as a junior. And I think you should feel good about this pick. Now, here's my other question, though. Daniel Jones, is he going to be able, let's say that it works out on Hyatt's part, will Daniel Jones be able to hit him in stride? When we think about Tua and, Tyreek and Waddle, like it works. When we think about Patrick Mahomes and Tyreek Hill, it's like, yeah, he's out there somewhere. This kind of F it, he's out there somewhere type deal. Is Daniel Jones that guy? Because the first thing Brian Dabble did was put him on a short leash, give the ball to Saquon Barkley, don't throw it, and then he earned the trust from Brian Dabble. And then you saw towards the end of the season, he let that leash out go a little bit longer. He let him start throwing it, and then it finally ended at the Minnesota Vikings game where he had his best game, throwing percentage-wise, rushing yards, accurate. He had a great game, but it's a long offseason. And I still wonder if Daniel Jones will ever be a gunslinger, a guy that can hit a wide receiver, going 24 miles an hour. And if he has the confidence at this stage to throw the F-it ball, he's out there somewhere. I think on paper, it's a lot of great players. No. I do think on paper it's a lot of great players, but I need to see it manifest into something practical on the field. It's like you could give me a really, expensive sports car, but I don't drive stick. So all I would be able to do is look at it. Be like a M16 without a trained Marine to pull the trigger. It's useless. And I'm wondering if this weapon will prevail in the hands of Daniel Jones. That is probably my biggest concern about the pick. But I don't want to be negative. I just need to see it happen. DJ is that guy with Hodgins and Waller and Campbell, 100%. I have zero doubt. Yeah, and that is another thing. You're going to have a lot more weapons this year. So, in a way, it may not be fair for me to sit here and analyze a guy that didn't have many weapons to go off of. So, I will say I'm not really judging. I'm just at square one. I'm not hot nor cold on this situation. I believe it can work out, but we'll have to wait and see. I'm excited for preseason. I don't know if Dabble played his, players in the preseason. That there's coaches that just don't do that. You got the Rams head coach, Sean McVay. They asked Sean Payton because last year Nathaniel Hackett was like, we're not playing any starters in the preseason. And then nobody was ready week one. Sean Payton said right away, oh, no, all the starters are going to play in preseason. Yeah. So Sean Payton is very old school mixed with some new school. I don't know if Brian Dabble is going to play these guys or wait. I think this season is his make or break for them. If he degrades at all from last season, I think he's done there. Yeah, I would say if he stays average, I do think they would give him another year. And I think he's a little bit above average right now. But if he comes, okay, so that would be a digress by the book. But I think as long as he doesn't completely suck, I think that they would give him one more year because now we've seen the flashes. We've seen those moments where it's like, whoa, is Daniel Jones elite? What happened? And they also just paid him $40 million. And I know they can opt out of it, but sometimes it's hard to do it after 1 year. Maybe after the second year, it would be a lot easier. So I do think they're married for the next 2 years. And plus, I'm optimistic that Daniel Jones is going to earn himself a contract after this contract. I'm optimistic about it. I'm not 100% sure on it either. So that is true. He may get at least 2 years for sure. So I'll ask you guys this and then I'll wrap it up. Besides your team, right? Like Giants, Broncos, who do you think had the best draft this year? There were teams that got high value, but they made interesting decisions, like the decision to get Bijan Robinson when you have two amazing running backs. And I got to say, for me, obviously the Eagles, I don't need to go into that again. What they did is incredible. I got to go with the team that did what nobody else did, and that's get two of the best players at their position. They got the best cornerback and the best receiver. And earlier, when I was writing the best matchups I'm looking forward to, I was like, the best cornerback. Okay, who's the best receiver? I'm like, they're on the same team. They're going to go against each other in practice. Do you know how good that's going to be for them too? To be going against each other like that in practice all the time. He's a little bit above the curve. He was coach of the year. Not Dabble. Daniel Jones was a little bit above the curve. I never said above the curve. I said he's a little bit above average. No, I think I'm all in on Dabble. I'm talking about Danny Dimes. I don't have a team myself. I've always enjoyed watching all the games and watching all the top players do their thing. Yeah. I mean, honestly, until the podcast started, I would always watch the draft, but it was kind of I would go to the bathroom during it, if I had to run to the store and get something, that wasn't an issue. And this is the most kind of locked on the draft I've ever been. And I got to say, it's made the NFL season feel a lot more exciting. Just to see all these guys, which ones are busts, which ones aren't, which ones are good. Is Bryce Young elite? CJ Stroud might be better. It'll be so much fun. So that is my kind of draft breakdown, and there's going to be more videos and shorts to come. I have to fly back to LA in 2 days, and I actually really just wanted to stay home for a little bit, but I have to go back over there. But I'm going to be releasing the interviews, and I'm not going to be there as long this time. I'm going to be back in 7 days or 6 days. So I'll be back here for next week's Monday episode. But for Monday's episode and Wednesday and Thursday, I'm going to be in a hotel room. I'm going to try to go somewhere. I'm going to try to go to the beach or something. But, oh, yeah, come on by LA. Definitely. So I gotta see if I can work it into the schedule, because I have a shuttle that's like picking me up and moving me. So I just have to see when does the shuttle get there, try to work it around. I tried to do it last time. I wanted to make it happen, but I ended up getting dropped off at the airport at like 4 a.m, and it was like my flight was at 10. It's just kind of that awkward time. So, but definitely live stream from the beach. I'm gonna find a spot. Monday's episode. No, I won't say Monday. I'll say Monday, Wednesday, or Thursday is going to be from a beautiful spot. If I don't, then I owe you a beer or something, or a cup of tea. So thank you guys for being here, because I was doing I was streaming Thursday, Friday, Saturday. No, today's Saturday. It feels like Sunday. But today, and you guys have showed up for all of it. So thanks for tuning in. and keeping the channel going strong. I went on that trip and I didn't post any shorts while I was on it, and the YouTube algorithm punished me for taking my vacation. I literally posted like Aaron Rodgers. I was one of the first people to put a short out. Aaron Rodgers, the news came out, and I was 1 minute time late from seeing it, and I already had my short posted. So I saw that it had like 42 views, and I was like, you know what, YouTube, F you. It's like, God forbid, you have to go to a funeral or something like that, and you don't have time to put a short out. You're just going to change the whole algorithm so that people feel like they have to, post every day. That doesn't seem right. I don't know. If you're listening, YouTube, I don't want you to punish me more. I just think about what I said. Maybe use phone stick to do a selfie with a shark or something. I have metal in my leg from my knee all the way down to my ankle. So if the only reason I say that is because I was just in the beach a couple days ago, and I was thinking if a shark bit me, it would be ironic that my rod would save my life most likely. I don't think they would be able to rip it out. It's metal. You can't bite through that. Maybe they can. I don't know. I want to know that. Could a shark bite through a titanium 6mm rod and screws as well? All right, guys. Well, I will see you guys on Monday. Thank you guys for being here, and shout out to everybody else that's going to watch this afterwards, whether it's Jinja, Liam, all you guys, and I will see you guys on Monday. Please like the video for me. Let's get that algorithm going back again, and I'll see you guys soon.